जय हिंद एंड वेलकम फ्रेंड्स। आज हमारे साथ हैं ब्रिगेडियर विनायक वीएसएम विशिष्ट सेवा मेडल। सर 1975 में इंडियन आर्मी में कमीशन हुए थे। सर एक प्राउड एलुमनाई है नेशनल डिफेंस एकेडमी और इंडियन मिलिट्री एकेडमी के। सर की इनिशियल सर्विस रेजिमेंट ऑफ आर्टिलरी में थी और उसके बाद फिर आर्मी कोर ऑफ एयर डिफेंस में थी। सर ने एक बटालियन कमांड की है एयर डिफेंस में और इसी के साथ साथ एक ब्रिगेड कमांड की है सीआईसीटी ऑपरेशंस में 1990 के डिफ़िकल्ट टाइम में जेएनके में। सर को विशिष्ट सेवा मेडल उनकी सर्विस के लिए दिया गया जब वो एनसीसी के साथ जुड़े हुए थे। सर डायरेक्टर जनरल भी थे मध्य प्रदेश और छत्तीसगढ़ एनसीसी के। थैंक यू सर फॉर हैविंग एक्सेप्टिंग आवर इनविटेशन। ग्लैड टू सी।
Thank you, sir. Sir, our today's topic on the eve of 26th January, we would like to know from your experience about the various defense policies that are there in the country and what role a citizen can play to empower the armed forces through his votes and better policy making in this country. We would like to ask, sir, that what is the Indian strategic culture and what how our political masters who are leading governments can learn from the armed forces to make better decisions during crisis that we have come across from our neighbors and the operations that we take. For example, Sri Lanka was a case wherein the political leadership was in sync with the military leadership. And what are such instances and how we are going to move forward? We're going to ask.
See, as far as the armed forces is concerned, as I mentioned, that we are a very professional army, and over the years we have evolved. I mean, we are initially when our Indian Army is a continuation of the British Army in its modern form. So as far as during initially in the British, they only had our troops as cannon fodder to fight the war. I mean, officers were inducted much later when their involvement of troops increased, and they ran short officers because it is any country. The armed forces leadership when ran short of people to join the army, they it Indians somewhere close to the First World War. Now, as far as after the First World War, the entry into the armed forces increased. Otherwise, officer, the maximum a person was a junior commissioner officer. For example, like even my father happens to be the first Indian officer to be in the corps of military police. Otherwise, that was always the they were British officered by Britishers only and men. So what happened is, you can say roundabout in the 40s, just before they realized that they need officers, and they increased the intake of officers in the armed forces. Before the Second World War, they had more officers from I'll call it native if you call it British, not now. Now native is no more there. So as far as our officers, when they come into what you call when they were officers, they were very good. For example, like Sagar Singh, there are various generals of that time who were very good and better than the British. I mean, if you go through the history of some of our generals, that the British officers, the only thing they could, what you call, demean a chap is maybe a skin color. Otherwise, as far as their intellect and competence was concerned, it was unquestionable. Even General Wavell, Auchinleck, they acknowledged Indian officers. In fact, many a times when these Indian officers were what you call taken up by their British, colleagues, the general at the time would see through, and they used to appreciate our officers. Similarly, once these officers, that's why you see when the India got independence, officers were of a very less service. I mean, they were. I mean, if you see today, they would have been, say, a senior, a lieutenant colonel or major. I mean, all of a sudden vacancies to become a general. So that situation is not now. And now, I mean, you'll find to become a brigadier, you will be somewhere close to your 50s. You'll be more than 40. So that. So what I'm saying is, as far as the Indian on its own, we have evolved. We have a lot of our courses. We have a courses and we have to perform right through, right from the day we joined the Indian Military Academy. It is our seniority and competence which counts. Like if your number, your commission number is higher, I mean, this most senior you are in your commission number means the lower. The number is lower, but merit is higher. So you'll be senior. Even one number in the army makes a difference when it comes to seniority. So the army is a very professional army, as I told you. Like in the outside, they have no competition. I mean, they have all become a batch becomes go promotion batch by batch. So it's not there in the army. I mean, the rejection rate or is, I mean, the from say half colonels to earlier majors to lieutenant colonel, which is selection, about 50% is to make it. Now that thing is now only 25% make it. So you see the pyramid is very steep. So
Yes,
as far as the army competence is concerned, it is. I mean, there's no denying the fact. I've been through the army, even very. I mean, it's not the rank which counts; it's the experience. We have a lot of courses. Are courses like the defense, starting from the Defense Services Staff College, which has a competitive course, first competitive course. Then you have higher command. You have then you have the national NDC, National Defense College, where people are put in at the brigadier level. So as far as our officers are trained, strategic thinking and all, they are there. But problem is in our country that the armed forces are not included in the higher policy decision making. I mean,
no,
you'll find a very junior ranking bureaucrat. He would have had experience in various ways to at the higher level. Whereas our officers, they will study, they will do everything, they will speak, but they will not get a. They're not. For example, if you take all the border talks with the Chinese, it has been held without a single armed forces attending that meeting. It's only the
no,
armed forces which has moved its foot on ground. I mean, you cannot, you need to know the ground rather than just take decisions from papers and files. So, as
no.
I mean, our file pushers take priority, whereas the people who move on foot on ground, they are not heard. There are a lot of difference in what is on the ground and what is on the paper. So if you see even the border, our border issue with China has been messed up. That's why
No.
we reached the situation at Galwan, because there's ambiguity. I don't blame as far as Chinese is concerned, the ambiguity is by design. They have kept the borders
No.
ambiguous. Whereas as far as we are concerned, our ambiguity is by our own misplaced perceptions. We do not know. I mean, I've been in Kargil, I've seen the LC, the line of control, and right. I mean, if you see, I mean, if you go on, it is eyeball to eyeball contact. Now, there is a thing called when you map reading, right, from a soldier. Even a Jawan should know map reading. It is, that
No.
your map should relate to ground and your ground should relate to map. That's
Yes,
how
sir.
it is. Otherwise, if things now you have very high resolution GPS and ground to map, got to be very sure of yourself. You may be
Yes.
talking something on the ground, but and marking something else on the map. It's the record which makes the difference. So that is, so as far as the armed forces is concerned, nowhere have they been taken into confidence at the higher level. And we have reached a stage where we have got borders which are ambiguous. I mean, the
So
Chinese
then how
say,
do you make the plan?
so as far as, and it is the first time in Galwan you find they talk the core commanders level talks, where is chaired by the, I'm not privy to what is happening, but from what I can get from the media, that this is the first time the military has had a say on ground while dealing with Chinese, at least, but is localized. I don't know whether there the national level, whether what is being discussed in Ladakh, is it applicable for Arunachal Pradesh or is it applicable for the central sector? So therefore, as far as our armed forces is concerned, the armed forces must be included in the national strategic affairs, and they must have a say. Not that you just thrust things down the army, what you decide, and then like you have put a situation where our troops had to go unarmed with lathis, and what we faced lethal sort of manual weapons from the Chinese side, for which we lost though our troops fought bravely on ground, and I mean the Chinese are embarrassed for the misadventure. But what I feel is the armed forces finally, when it comes to that last hand-to-hand muscle flexing, that is the armed forces. So if
Yes.
that is the last, what do you call, I mean, the proof of you are there, you're physically sitting there. That matters. Claims and other things on paper is not the way to fight the current war, especially with Chinese. So therefore, what I feel is that it's high time our political masters, they understand this aspect and give our military commanders and the military think tank due, and include them right from the top in the decision making process and framing of policies and strategy.